What's up there, Workforce? Chris here with Work2Game, and it is time to talk about terrain. How do you store it? How do you just make something that's a little more modular? So let's dive in. Now, this week is brought to you by our Patreons. We are fan-funded here, so definitely thank a Patreon in the comments below. Maybe consider being one. These are the two that brought you this video, I guess. We're just going to thank them a little more than everybody else. And let's dive in. Now, one of the biggest issues with making your own terrain is that it's really hard to store. It takes up a ton of space, and we want something that is ideally flat packable and doesn't play exactly the same every time. So I kind of thought, how do you make something that's a little more like a Lego or a Lincoln Log or something where it goes together, it snaps together, it fits a module that works for your game, and you can just do that. Now, terrain is standard 3 inches tall. We know that, and we know that there's usually kind of small pieces, medium pieces, and large pieces, and that is largely based on base size. Now, most people are playing with things as ruins with line of sight blocking for all windows and doors on the first floor, and that's going to change over future editions. What's balanced for one army may not be balanced for another. So as you constantly try to find terrain that works for your group of friends and your local meta, and ideally we would find one that would work for everybody's, but that's another conversation. How do you design terrain that's that flexible? Now, I've been working on kind of designing my own because I haven't really found a system that works for exactly what I want. And what I've done here is I've actually worked up a couple of mock-ups. We tried them out, we really enjoyed them, and basically I cut these X's in here. The reason I do X's is if you put something into an X, it doesn't twist. It's a really easy shape to repeat, it's an easy shape to stack, and it's an easy shape to make out of what I do for this next part. So what I've actually done is I've tried it out of foam core here. I'd like to make them out of MDF, but it was cheap and easy to cut this by hand and try it out this way. And I basically layer it as a series of layers, and it forms these kind of columns, and these columns end up with slots on the sides, slots on the front. Ideally, it's going to have a slot on all 4 sides, and then it has an X missing from the front, so you can insert more columns, and an X protruding on the bottom. So that can then slide directly into one of these, and it sticks pretty well, doesn't twist, doesn't turn, and the slots are actually meant to fit walls. So these walls are basically layers of foam like that, and they kind of slide into those slots. Those slots are the thickness of one piece of foam core. And so if you have a piece on this X, you can see how a short wall would fit on my 3-inch module here. Now, the problem is when you get into longer walls, this makes for a lot of columns and a lot of walls. And so I actually made some longer ones that will kind of fit and bridge 2 gaps. And then these are in theory set on a module where if you have columns on the next base, you can actually link the bases to make long, skinny pieces of terrain and things like that. I'd like to make some half-height ones for barricades, and I'm really driving into kind of what exactly terrain needs to be, and I'd like to maybe move to the point where I could get these pushed through a laser cutter, made, from MDF, and would be a really kind of relatively affordable system for the fact that it stores. This is like maybe 2.5 tables worth of terrain, and it's stored real tight like this. And I've got all these little bases. I've got dozens of walls. I think I've got like 50 or 60 columns. Big walls, little walls, skinny bases that are just meant to kind of fit barricades. And then when you get to the bigger bases, they don't quite fit into my my actual box there because my box isn't physically the size, but otherwise it stores really, really easy. I can actually flat pack those directly into the top of my army case, and they set up, they go down, couldn't have been simpler, worked great. Worked a lot better than I thought. So we did kind of come up with a couple design changes. That's why I did it out of foam core the first time, on ways to make like second floors and things a little easier to assemble, a little more stable, and a little more flexible. But I think I've got the design exactly where I wanted it. I just wanted to share it with you guys. So how do you guys make your own terrain? How do you design something? How do you make sure that it's fair for all armies, especially when you're playing with really shooty armies versus melee armies with the new FAQ rules where if you don't make it all the way up, you're not charging. Now, you can still have wobbly model syndrome, but I can't just have all of them barely sticking on there. So when I play a melee army, my brother that plays orcs, like, you can really beat his boys by just having too small of a platform on that second floor, and you can just kind of shoot down at him and there's nothing he can do about it. So designing terrain that's equal to everybody and is reasonable and says, you know what, we have all these armies, and if something was really that unfair, odds are they wouldn't choose to fight there. They would wait to fight another day. You're not going to have a melee army charging across an open field at a gun line. They're going to pick something a little more strategic. So not to get too diving into the fluff there, there, but it should be a fair fight, and we shouldn't know which army is going to win every single tournament based on terrain choices and board layout. It's hard enough with the rate at which codexes get released to keep things balanced and equal. Let's not make terrain sway things too heavily towards one set of people. So thank you guys so much for hanging out. Definitely let me know in the comments below what you guys use terrain. What do you think about terrain? What do you guys think about modular terrain? Is this something that you guys find interesting so I can continue to update you guys? I'd be willing to kind of consider maybe even, you know, making some for some of you guys, and possibly maybe I'll put that up on like an Etsy or something like that. If that's something that interests you guys, just so I can get that out there at kind of the cost of doing it. But this has been Chris with Work to Game. I will see you guys next week. Ideally, I'll start updating you on my army as I prepare to take it to a grand tourney. I got a lot of painting to get done. I'll see you then. What is Work to Game? 30 seconds, go! Work to Game is basically a channel where we talk about video games, anything we like about video games. We sometimes post vlog videos about something else that we just want to talk about. We kind of have a schedule. It changes all the time. It's in the About section on YouTube. We also stream over on Twitch just anytime we want to play games. Right now, it's happening more and more. I don't know what's happening at the time you watch this video, but the best thing you could do is click on the About page and kind of see if there's a rough plan that we have here